everyone. I'm Divya. I'm a growth product manager at FEELD, and a large part of my role includes running experiments, either to help our members drive more connections or to help us drive more revenue as well. So today, I'm very excited to be talking to you about how curiosity drives growth at FEELD and the role that experimentation has in this process. So let's get started. So today I'm going to share a little bit about FEELD, the role of curiosity as our centering value, a little bit about our revenue model so that we all have the same context, and then I'm going to share how the growth mindset and experimentation come together, and finally I'm going to end by talking about how I had some key learnings from the latest experiment I ran in Adapty. So let's get started. But before we do, I'm very curious to understand, how many of you have heard of FEELD? Can you give me a show of hands? Okay, great. It's always nice to have a few people who know the product. But for those of you that don't know, FEELD was founded in 2014 by our CEO, Anna Kirova, and her partner, Demo, in London. Now, people have been exploring sexually for centuries, but they've never really had a safe outlet or a platform to express their desires until now. And FEELD aims to be this very platform that helps humans meet like-minded others. So we're available in 114 countries, and we're now host to one of the largest open-minded communities worldwide. So you might be wondering, what makes FEELD different than many of the other dating apps out there? Well, we don't advocate for any sort of end game or final destination to dating. So being on FEELD is really about people exploring more and learning about themselves through their connections with others. So it's an evolving journey, and everything that we do at FEELD is about helping our members facilitate this sort of inner discovery and journey. And this extends to everything that we do, whether it's in the features that we launch, the products that we design, as well as the experiments that we run. So curiosity is really at the center of everything that we do at FEELD, both internally and externally. Now, in a survey that we ran amongst our members and non-members, we found out that one of the big reasons that people are on FEELD is for self-exploration. So we asked them this question: what is most important to you in your life right now? And 70% of our members responded that they really like to grow personally, while 30% responded growing in a relationship. So this makes FEELD one of the only apps out there that's really geared towards the individual and not the relationship. In the same survey, we also found out that 50% of our members actually identified as something other than heterosexual, and a quarter of them listed ethical non-monogamy as a desire. So as you can see, we're really rewriting the scripts of what it means to build intimacy in our relationships. And as part of that, it's really critical for us to offer optionality and inclusivity in everything that we do. So one of the ways we've done that is to allow our members to choose from 20 plus sexualities, genders, and desires to choose from. But not only that, we've taken it a step further, and we've offered a series of free and premium offerings as part of our revenue model as well. Now, we operate on a freemium model. What does that mean? It means that the core functionality of our app is completely free to use. So you could download the app, register a profile, find connections through browsing our Discover stack, and send likes, and create chats as well. Now, all of this is what we offer for free. Now, for members that want to go deeper and explore their curiosity further, we also have the Majestic membership. So that allows members an enhanced set of features that allows them to take their curiosity deeper. So for example, they could see who likes you, or they could filter their connections by desires, or they could browse incognito, which basically means that a member wouldn't see their profile until they liked them first. Now, for some of our members who choose to want to explore this curiosity on a more ad hoc basis, we have a series of consumables, and there's two I want to talk about today, one of which is a ping, and the other is uplift. So pings allow our members to essentially notify someone immediately that they've liked them. And uplift allows them to show their profile in our Discover stack for a period of 24 hours. Now, as we are an privately owned business, we've been allowed the opportunity and the chance to really grow very intentionally. And what that means is that we've actually chosen to be ads-free. It's a deliberate decision because at the end of the day, we really respect and value our members' privacy and safety. And compromising that would really be putting one of our core values at FEELD at risk. So we've always chosen to pick our members over our bottom line. Now, we don't really believe in growth at all costs, because at the end of the day, we are building a community. So we're really intentional about who we have on our platform, how we keep them, and why they're there. And curiosity is really at the core of this growth mindset. So we're always seeking ways to evolve our experimentation practices and the way that we operate, just as our members are doing. So this is where actually Adapty comes into play, because it allows us to create experiments, whether that's on pricing, packaging, and it will enable us to scale very quickly and lean into this curiosity. In fact, the experiment I'm going to talk to you about today is something that I couldn't have run without this tool. But at the end of the day, Adapty is really a tool, and it can take you really further if you enable yourself to use your curiosity to go deeper. And I now like to illustrate this point using a screenshot. It's really an illustration, so don't take the data to heart. But basically, I want to use this to explain, why we would like to go deeper. So as you can see in the screenshot, and now that we all understand what pings are, in an experiment that we ran between the control and a variant group, if we just looked purely at the ARPU, which is the average revenue per paying user, we would have said, okay, this experiment didn't work because it's higher for the control group, and we should just roll back. But this is where we paused and took a step back, because this was going against everything that we knew about our user base and how they used pings. So when we went deeper, one of the things we noticed was that there was a difference in proportion between the number of top spenders in the control and the variant group, which is what accounted for this difference. So that's when we decided, hey, why don't we rerun the experiment, removing these top spenders so that it also reflected much more closely to the experience of our members. And when we did that, that's how we were able to realize a positive revenue opportunity. Now, before I share the learnings part of this presentation, I think it's really important to set some context so that we all have the same baseline. So here I want to share a little bit about the goals and the methodology before I cover the learnings. So our goal really in 2024 has been to drive more revenue, and specifically, we had a double revenue goal for 2024. You're going to ask me, why did you pick such a high growth target? Well, as you're aware, the dating market is really saturated right now. We have a lot of giant apps. There's plenty of smaller apps also joining the market. And the only way that we can continue to fulfill our mission and vision to provide our members with a safer environment and platform so that they can explore deeper is to be able to grow our revenue and rechannel it into our product. So that's what we did. And of course, there's many different ways in which we could achieve this revenue growth. We could introduce new features, we could introduce new consumables, but the one thing we thought we should definitely try is to introduce a larger pack size. I'm going to pause here and take you a few slides back to explain what I mean. So as you can see in this particular instance, when I say pack size, what I mean is we're essentially introducing a new ping option. So the original example, let's say, had 1, 5, and 10 pings. The variant option now has 1, 10, and 20 pings. So we chose to keep the messaging constant, the actual design of the paywall constant, so we're just testing one thing to see how it worked. Okay, let me just go forward. So then we decided to use Adapty here to test different variations of this paywall to different groups of audiences. Now, given that it was our very first experiment, we chose to run with 95% in control and 5% in variant to a global audience to make sure that we knew how to use the tool correctly and it also was risk assessed. Once that turned to be ROI positive, we wanted to rerun this experiment with 80% in the variant and 20% in control, but rerunning this to our largest markets. And when that worked, again, positively, we then chose to roll it out to the entire markets in the large group, and then decided to keep 5% in control just to make sure that when we tested for LTV as well as repeat purchases, it continued to be positive. So at the end of the day, this experiment allowed us to grow our revenue by about 2% in our largest market. Now, there were several learnings that we had through the process, but the first one I wanted to share is how could we design an experiment that really reflected the audience's way of being. And a lot of our members are globetrotters, and we just were trying to figure out a way to use Adapty to do that. So in our first iteration, we believed that the best way to reach the audience was to use a combination of store country and IP targeting. But once we ran this version, we realized that it created some more biases in our data because it meant that we were missing out from an audience group who were more in market. So what do I mean? So if, let's say, a user was originally in Germany, but they happened to move to the UK, it meant that they would also see this experiment. And then it created a lot of confusion for us versus users that were already in market. So then when we troubleshooted with the Adapty team, their recommendation was to use store country. So we did that, and then we were able to reach this group of audience. Now, a hot tip for you, because we learned it through the experiment, is always to make sure you have the latest Adapty SDK, because it helps you improve the accuracy of your pre-purchase store data, and that's actually what is used when we talk about store country. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and explain to you why I have these two graphs about before removing Android and after. So, as I shared earlier, because of the differences in SDK, we also noticed that we had a different proportion of Android members in the variant and the control. So instead of rerunning the entire experiment, we chose to just assume that the Android members held the same patterns as our iOS data users. And so we were then able to reach a much more consistent demographic between our variant and control. So we finished our experiment, and then we hit a second bias. Now, this was very unexpected. So when we were looking at our post-analysis data, we noticed that we had a different proportion of men and women in our study. And this wasn't necessarily representative of who we had in our member base. So we decided to go deeper, and then we noticed that we had a 10% variation between the men and the women in the control and the variant group. Now, if it was 5%, we can say it's within confidence, and we could have continued to use the data. So we had two options: either rerun the entire experiment, or we could have relied on a data technique called inverse proportional weighting, basically which allows the probabilities within the two groups to be estimated and accounted for, so that we could then draw a decent conclusion for our experiment. Here again, I want to use the chart to illustrate. These are mere illustrations, so please don't take the exact data that you see. So with the chart on the left, you notice that before we removed the gender bias, we had at least a 10% variation. And once we used the technique, it brought us down to 5%. So what is the main conclusion I really want to share with you all today? The first is that it's really great that we've got experimentation tools like Adapty, because it allows us to run experiments quickly, because the setup is fast, and it helps us meet our needs. But as you've seen, it's also really important for us to partner these tools in a way that tells us that we can step back and analyze our data much deeper. Otherwise, you could miss really important opportunities for your brand and your own members. And as you know, at FEELD, we are driven by curiosity, and we're really excited that we're able to use Adapty to take this to greater heights. Now, I really hope, and obviously we've got a pipeline of experiments that we're able to run using Adapty, whether that's packaging, pricing, and I'm really excited to see how we take that and go deeper. And really hope that through this presentation, you've understood how you could also similarly use your own curiosity to find the right insights and uncover the right opportunities for your brands. So thank you very much for having me and for your attention as well. And if you have any questions, you can ask me now or throughout the conference.